Narcissists are overconfident by nature, and they also are very dependent on your supply. And one of the worst things with a narcissist is when they discard somebody and they're expecting that person to respond in a certain way, and that person doesn't react as expected. Narcissists are very dependent on the expected reactions out of you because when narcissists do certain things, like push you away, like devalue you, like try to get you to chase, they're already expecting a certain reaction out of you. And that certain reaction that they're expecting, when fulfilled, when you comply, it validates them, it strokes their ego, it gives them a sense of worth. But when you don't react as expected, when you don't give them that necessary supply, then they tend to spiral into all kinds of directions because it's like they're not getting their needs met. It's like they've opened this loop that they need to close, and you're the only one who can close it by giving them the expected reaction, and you don't do it. There's nothing more toxic from the narcissist's perspective. For the narcissist, no one is more toxic to them than someone who doesn't comply the way they need, than someone who doesn't supply them the way they need. For the narcissist, the most toxic person is the person who they've done something really bad to that person. They're expecting that person to chase. They're expecting that person to validate the narcissist. They're expecting that person to stroke their ego. And the person doesn't behave as expected. Because what that does is it creates an open wound in the narcissist, which is because they didn't get the validation, they didn't get the remedy they need to soothe their own inner turmoil, their own inner pain. All that inner turmoil and pain comes to the surface because you haven't sacrificed yourself to make them feel better. Because narcissists always need people in some way, shape, or form to sacrifice themselves to make the narcissist feel better. So when you comply with the narcissist, when you take the bait and plead and let their attacks on you work, then you're soothing them, you're remedying their pain. But when you don't behave as expected, when you don't comply, then all of a sudden they're left with their own open wounds to face. And then the thought of you to them is pain. They see you as somebody who's really, obviously you're being non-compliant, but they see you as somebody who's toxic to them because you don't soothe their own inner toxicity. They need people who will nurture them and self-sacrifice for them at all costs. And of course, even if you were to do that, they would devalue you, discard you even harder because people who are self-sacrificial to the narcissist, even though they give the narcissist instant relief, those people are seen as worthless in the narcissist's eyes because they have no self-value, no self-worth if they do that. Again, you start to get the feeling just by thinking about those key concepts that you can never win in a relationship with a narcissist. There's no way it can be healthy. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Damned if you comply, damned if you don't comply. The only difference is if you're someone who finally acknowledges your worth, if you're somebody who finally steps away, if you're somebody who finally decides you're not going to go with their own toxic ways anymore, then all of a sudden you're the one who's labeled as toxic. You're the one who's labeled as problematic. You're the one who's labeled as chaotic. And they spiral because they don't know how to handle themselves when you don't comply, because narcissists are very dependent on your reaction. Narcissists are very dependent on the supply you give in response to the things they do to you. And every time you don't react as expected, you cause them to spiral. They go into this kind of rabbit hole, and then they're trying to work their way out. And most of the time, as they're trying to work their way out, they try to find some alternative means to punish you. They try to find some alternative means to reel you back in. But obviously at this stage, once they've noticed that you're not compliant as they expect, they start to tread more carefully with you because they see you as somebody who, hold on a second, maybe you do have self-worth. Maybe you do have self-love. Maybe you won't sacrifice yourself for toxic narcissistic people, in this case them. And the thought of that makes them tread carefully, but at the same time, narcissists don't really have a reliable backup plan. They don't really have a plan B or C that's suitable to them. Of course, they can shift their attention to other things and other people and so on, but it doesn't really soothe them in the way they need. What they really need is you to be compliant. What they really need is to get you back into their orbit so they can control you and this time punish you even further and hopefully break you down so far that you'll never be a threat to their ego again. And that's what narcissists really hate about their ex-supplies or people who they once controlled and no longer control, is that when they no longer control you, you are a threat to their ego. When they no longer control you and you're doing well, you are very damaging to their ego. Even if you're no longer paying attention to them, you're no longer want anything to do with them, you don't love them, you don't hate them, you don't anything, you're doing your thing, right? Narcissists, they attach their energy to you and they try to somehow find some string of control, and they go to great lengths to do that. I mean, they create whole new personas of who they pretend to be, and it's not even pretend; it's how they are. They actually adopt new personas and they become these new people because it's their kind of survival instinct. It just shows how unreal and superficial they are. It's kind of like, if you know that actor, Sarah, um, I forgot the name, the guy who did Borat and Ali G, something Baron Cohen, Sacha Baron Cohen, I think, who kind of adopted different personas and characters throughout his career. Narcissists are like that by nature, and they don't know any other way to live. But just do know that if the narcissist ever tried to devalue you heavily or discard you, and you didn't take the bait, which is to react in a way that they expected, they don't know how to get over that. They will obsess intensely over how toxic you are for not sacrificing yourself for them. They will obsess intensely around how unfair you were to them, even if you were just preserving your own well-being. Because the narcissists, they don't have the latitude to be able to think about anybody's well-being but their own, and they think that everybody lives on this planet to serve them. No other purpose. It's always a one-way relationship in the narcissist. You give, they take. You give, they take until you're emptied out and there's nothing else to give. And then they squander you, they squash you and leave. And they can only stay away as long as they know that either A, they have control of you going forwards, even through subtle means, or B, you're destroyed, or some combination of the two.